So both armies had weapons, but the weapons that ZAPU had were criminalized as weapons of an insurgency. And ZAPU was also taking care of weapons that belonged to the ANC. That is on records of ZAPU and records of the ANC. Those weapons were now criminalized. And then there was the murder of those 6 tourists from Europe. That was conducted by so-called dissidents, which it has come to the fore if you read Kevin Woods, and if you listen to what Patrick Joao said soon after the coup, that that kidnapping of the tourists was choreographed. It was carried out by members of the Central Intelligence Organization, simply in order to soil the name of Joshua Nkomo and of that of ZAPU and ZIPRA, and give credence and justification for a military onslaught onto Matebeleland and the Migrants. It was meant to alarm the world and disgust the world so that they could look aside, so that US will look aside, UK will look aside, as Mugabe massacred the people in the Migrants and Matebeleland. And then after those excuses, what were the dissidents and who were the dissidents? It's important to focus and look at the identity and the constitution of who the dissidents were, what they were, and what the nature of their command was. I read Matebeleland, this well-researched book. What I'm trying to do here is I want to insist first that dissidents existed, that there were people that could be called dissidents and bandits. But now let's go to who were they, what they were they about, and what was the nature of their command. I want to insist that dissidents existed, but how were they invented? How were they produced? And what was the nature of their command? I think those are the 3 important questions under this subtopic. I've outlined the arms cache as one of the excuses, and also the kidnapping of those tourists as one of the excuses. And the tourists were important because they were European and white extraction, which was really to annihilate ZAPU and its name in the West and all that. Right. So I say dissidents did exist. First, I was reading Matebeleland, this well-researched book, a book that was produced with some of the most admirable social science work that can be witnessed. It's not known by many people that Zanla had dissidents. That is the General Solomon Mujuru instructed 3,000 Zanla guerrillas from Mozambique not to report to the assembly points and remain outside for what they will be needed to do, which was to campaign for ZANU-PF during the first independence elections of Zimbabwe. What these dissidents and bandits that did not report to the assembly points, were not integrated into the National Army, went on to do, nobody knows. But it's a fact that Zanla had its own dissidents that were created. They were instructed not to join the National Army, not to report to the assembly points, and not to go for the retraining that was being done, because they needed to be utilized and weaponized for political purposes by ZANU-PF. The apartheid regime in South Africa created, promoted, and produced its own dissidents that were unleashed into Matebeleland to cause terror, instability, and keep the Zimbabwean entity busy on itself, not on other issues outside the border. You know about Super ZAPU, and all that. So the apartheid regime was very much interested in dissidents and what dissidents were doing. And there was an elite coalition, conspiracy between ZANU-PF at intelligence level and the South African apartheid regime at intelligence level. Timothy Skaneshia has captured what is in the records here about 2 kilometers from where I am, in the South African declassified archives library close to the union buildings, that there was overt cooperation between ZANU-PF and the apartheid regime. And there's one documented meeting which was attended by Emmerson Mnangagwa in person as the Minister of Intelligence and Security, where a pact was reached. It's even documented in Skaneshia that ZAPU and the ANC are supposed to be finished off on Zimbabwean soil. And that elite intelligence and military pact, which is on record, some declassified records say that, produced its own dissidents, agents, provocateurs, killers, assassins that furthered the interests of that alliance. And then there were Zipra deserters from the ZNA. Milestone documents how Zipra cadres in the ZNA barracks were hounded, killed, tortured, imprisoned, threatened. Some of them with their guns ran away. Some of them retired early. Others were eliminated and others were put in jail. In Milestone, this critical narrative, some were saved by Solomon Juru, who alerted them that you are going to be killed, run for your life. Some crossed borders and went to South Africa and others. And those people became what can be called dissidents. And as I said before, there are Zipra cadres that foresaw the genocide, especially the Kwai troop, that were uneasy about joining the National Army, and that disobeyed Nkomo in ZAPU and ran away into the bush and became deserters. What does that bring us to? It brings us to a picture as to how dissidents came to be. I haven't finished. Besides the disgruntled Zipra cadres, there were 5th Brigade actors. If you read Kevin Woods, that was at the time an insider in the CIO, in the army, and elsewhere. The CIO choreographed dissidents, soldiers that were taken, dressed in tatters, and sent to villages to pretend to be dissidents, commit crimes, robberies, and other things. And then tomorrow, another group will come in neat fatigues, following up on the dissidents that came yesterday, shooting people, killing them, and doing the diabolic and satanic crimes that I described earlier. So there were dissidents that were actors, that were directed from the CIO and the 5th Brigade. Many people in Cholocho and Kai and elsewhere in Plumtree will tell you that there were dissidents that were moving around and could not even speak fluent Isindebele or Kalanga or Tonga or Venda or Nambia, and were calling themselves Zipra dissidents that were fighting government and all that. But it was all a performance that was meant to justify the onslaught. And then there were Central Intelligence Organization dissidents proper. Kevin Woods narrates, or should I say confesses, because he was part of this act, that there were people like Guy Kusu that were moved around in police vehicles and in CIO vehicles and told to attack farms, homesteads, and other strategic targets to create an international picture of instability, insurgency in Matebeleland.